Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. Welcome back to our podcast series. Today, or this week, I should say, we're going to talk about the Great Resignation and how it's not new. It really isn't. It's a complete myth that the Great Resignation is new. But furthermore, what I really want to get into is what to do about it. You are going to hear from myself and my friend and co-host in this series, JC, and we are going to go over the myth from people are lazy and do not want to work to the fact that we have less people in the USA of working age. Also, we're going to openly discuss how people are fed up with low pay, no advancement and development, and quite honestly, being treated like a cog that is abused, hopefully not at your organization. And then the last two sections of the podcast are going to discuss, what can we as employers, as leaders, as HR professionals do about it? And then finally, which is super important, how do you get your executives to listen and take action? Let's jump in.
Please, you get nothing out of today's session. Our podcast is please revamp your recruiting and interview process so that you're having these deep human conversations in the selection process. I know we're always rushed. Everybody's in a rush during recruiting because we needed to hire somebody yesterday. But let's hire the right person and not just a warm body, knowing that we have less people to choose from, as we just discussed in the beginning of this podcast series. We need to make sure, though, that our organization is hiring people that have the same similar mission, or at least agree with and are on board with the company's mission. And then we need to move that into more of a social connection so that we don't need to be best friends at work, but we should know our coworkers.
and you know what? Up to this point in the conversation, I'm with you 110%. I want to add to this, though, in that, it's not just the IQ, it's the EQ, right? It's that emotional intelligence aspect. And if you're a leader that was dealt a set of cards and you're in a position where you're inheriting a workforce to a degree, and you've kept that workforce through part of the pandemic, or you're inheriting that workforce now, and you don't necessarily have the opportunity to vet the employees and choose who your new hires are, it's going to take just a touch extra of that emotional intelligence for you to be that strong leader to come to the table that is vulnerable, that is willing to not just proverbially open the door and say it's an open door policy, come talk to me anytime, but actually take hours out of your week to get to know the people, make that human connection, build that bond, do what Wendy's talking about, establish that social connection, build the trust between yourself and the workforce. So many other things are going to open up. I think that's that tipping point where people start to feel a little bit more valued, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so some of you that are listening today might be, touchy-feely type person, and you're like, no problem. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get to know my employees. But guess what? They may not be a touchy-feely person, and they may think you have an ulterior motive.
Exactly.
Which honestly, we kind of do. Our ulterior motive is to have a better workplace so that our employees don't leave us, and so that we're all kind of excited to come to work, whether it's physically or virtually. This survey, or this study that I mentioned in late 2021 by McKinsey and Company, more information that they uncovered was 62% of the respondents of that survey reported a change in their manager over the past 2 years. 96% of the contributors surveyed agreed that their manager has an impact on their well-being at work. And I could 100% say that, that I agree with that. Whoever your direct manager is, regardless of the title, it might be team lead, supervisor, manager, director, but whoever your direct manager is, they have a huge impact on the employee's well-being at work. And if your employee does not have a positive well-being, then they're not going to be in it to win it. They're not going to be, in love with the mission, and they're certainly not going to go the extra mile.
They're not even going to go 1 mile. Or if they do, they're going to go there as slow as humanly possible, right?
Yeah. And so that was 96% said managers had an impact on their well-being. 98% said that managers actually play a critical role in building an engaged and connected organizational culture. And then the final thing I wanted to share with you on that survey is 42% of employees said that they have left a past job because of their manager.
That is so true. Oh, my goodness. I'm surprised it's so low, to tell you the truth.
I know. It should be a little bit higher, but keep in mind, not everybody always 100% tells the truth, right. Especially in exit interviews. Hopefully this was a confidential survey, and I'm sure it would be. So how would you get to know, you're starting from today, how do you get to know your employees on a personal level? What would you want your manager to talk to you about or do training on their own?
I think one of the best things that could happen is your manager takes you out to Chili's, maybe has a few cocktails with you, gives you that nice wink and reassures you. No, I'm kidding. This isn't Mad Men. That's nutso. Don't do that. But honestly, in a real world scenario, what's been good for me personally, let it be for the people that I'm working for or those who I am working with, depending on the culture and environment that I'm in, is actually just shutting the door. Let it be the virtual door saying I'm on do not disturb, or the actual physical door, closing that door, and just talking about it all. Start, if the person is a bit more business oriented, let's start with the strategic plan and the mission. Let's go a little bit further on this and see where your thoughts for the future are compared to where I'm at. Let's reassure that we have that bond, not just in the way that we get our work done, but in the way that we could think about the future of work or where we're headed together. Have a firm base of communication and understanding and knowing that I can bring something to the table and talk to you, and it's going to stay here between us. Kind of like those employee surveys. You never know who file them, right? You never know. It's always anonymous.
Exactly. I would advise anybody, if you're doing any employee surveys, maybe get an external party involved.
Yeah.
I do that for quite a few of my clients because it's a perception. And unfortunately, it is also a reality where bad leaders, which of course is nobody listening to this podcast, but where bad leaders do get into the specifics of the survey to try to figure out who said what. And that shouldn't be what the survey should be about if you're surveying people. I want to talk real quickly about the survey that I mentioned, the McKinsey one.
Yes.
In that survey, the employees said, these are the skills that we want our managers to have, and then we will stay. We will have a good relationship. 57% said communication was at the top. Communication. 37% said developing me. So developing me and my coworkers is at the top. So do something to help me continue being successful. Doesn't always mean I, as the employee, want to climb the ladder. I want to continue being successful in my job or in my department. And then the third one was 30% said motivating others. So not only develop me, communicate with me, develop me, and then motivate me to want to help other people. Yeah. And, I want to stop right there. We were talking about training and development. So many times managers, HR, everyone, they get caught up with the training and development. They think that, people just want to be trained and developed because they want a promotion. But we don't have any more room for that. Maybe we're a small organization. We have a small org chart. We don't have anywhere for them to go. If that's the case, please don't hold back training and development because they're going to leave you anyways. They're probably more likely to stay because you've trained and developed them, even though you can't give them a fancy new title or a giant raise. you're still investing in them. Worst case, they leave and then they come back later on when they've learned even more somewhere else. And they said, you know what, you're a great place to work. I'm going to come back after I've been somewhere else, and I am going to come back and continue working there. But we're so afraid of the unknown that we do nothing.
So let's go deeper into that. I'd like to pin in on that with you. What can we as employers or leaders do? Is it as simple as getting to know the people as individuals, engaging, developing, providing ongoing feedback, develop leaders as leaders, not just supervisors, managers? Let's dig further on that, Wendy. What do you got there?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage everyone to, I mean, this just sounds like common sense, but we know common sense isn't common because it is actually a learned skill. You know, getting to know your people is so important. Some of you might be saying, well, where do I start? You might be new in a role or you've been there for a while, but you just don't have a connection with your employee. First of all, don't make any assumptions that the employee doesn't like you or whatever it might be. I do a lot of training, and that's what I was doing today with a client on personality styles. And so that's usually where I start because that's what I'm passionate about is I say, hey, new employee or new friend, this is my personality style. And this is how you could communicate better with me versus going, what's your personality style and how am I supposed to communicate with you?
Oh, wait a second though. Can't we just assume that based off someone's astrological sign?
No. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
We need to make sure, you know, I've written a few books, and in my books, I talk about personality styles. I talk about personality traits. So the styles I use is the DISC model: dominant, influential, supportive, and conscientiousness. And then I talk about, you know, introvert, extrovert, ambivert. But then I like to do a lot of training on generations and differences in age. But you know, the bottom line is we're all humans. And you and I were just talking about how many people are moving across the globe, not just across the state or the United States. And so we're going to have people in our workspace that aren't from our community, and they're going to bring something different. And we have to get to know employees as an individual and not assume because of their, you know, or their astrology or their birth country or their age that they're something. We have to stop judging people, and we really need to say, okay, I need to remove some of this bias, and the only way I'm going to do that is to get to know an individual on a you know, unique level, which means you're going to have to talk to them a lot.
Absolutely, you are. Individuals who share a common goal but have differing viewpoints on how to achieve it are truly the best source of innovation and creative organizational solutions at the end of the day. In a workplace where people feel free to express their thoughts and opinions, they are more likely to believe that they are working in a place where they are valued and respected. And in their minds, they are accepted. Build those bonds. Build those bonds. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just so important. If we were having this conversation 10 years ago, it was probably equally as important. But we weren't in this great resignation area. And so I think a lot of employers just ignored it or said, yeah, I'll deal with that later. Oh, the baby boomers aren't retiring yet. Yeah, I'll deal with that later. And we as a society kept, you know, as a corporate society, kept kicking the ball down the court of when are we going to handle these issues of paying people more, training them, developing them, making sure they want to stay in our organization. Well, the time's here now. We have no more excuses. Our excuse that I have heard, it has been, I don't have the money to do that. I don't have the time to do that. And I'm sorry, that's not a valid excuse. That is just an excuse. If you don't have the time to plan your business, then maybe somebody else should be running that division or that business as a whole.
Engaging, developing, providing ongoing feedback. Some things we talked about in the beginning. Sometimes at work, people make the jokes about there being like a work wife or work husband, or they have a best friend, or you may even run into a real tricky, maybe even borderline EEOC situation where someone says, "You're just like my son," and they treat them very special, right? But look, at the end of the day, having a best friend or someone who cares about you as a person at work is so critically important for you feeling like you fit in. It really is. And when people have close working relationships, they're more likely to feel safe, secure, and cared for because of the people you get to interact and connect with. Work then becomes a place where you want to be, not a place where you have to be. And that's where, in such a setting, you're more likely to be concerned about the work you do and the people that it then affects. So as a leader, it's very important to pivot and reposition yourself, even if it's you that has to be the one that becomes the person who cares about another person, or as long as it's perceived that way, especially if someone's feeling alone in the virtual world nowadays too, right?
Yeah, it really is. It really, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head for everything that you just stated there. We have to, first of all, stop promoting people into leadership roles when they haven't been trained. Don't make any assumption whatsoever that some other company trained them. Oh, well, on their resume, it says manager or director. Hey, they could have just keep getting promoted without any training. And then, I've seen this happen a lot. We, HR, the hiring team, we don't ask the right questions in interviews, even of experienced managers and directors. And we just assume because they have this title that's on their resume that they know what it means to be a manager. They know what it means to be a leader, but they absolutely may have no idea. And so anyone that you hire onto your team, internally or from the external resources, make sure you, first of all, ask the questions, find out what their skills really are, and then put everybody through some kind of training that they pass, so to speak, what is required to be a leader at your company. Additionally, leadership doesn't begin with a title. Just because somebody doesn't have just because they don't have a management title doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to be a leader. I actually find that many leaders don't have a title, but they're leading employees in one way or the other. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Some of the best executives you find out there they may even be perceived as one of the strongest leaders around. But if you look at their team, they may actually have like a number 2, a number 3, or even someone further down the chain, like a number 4, 5, 6, 7, who's actually the strong leader on that team that helps promote managing up. If you're finding yourself in a position where on your team you've got someone that has those natural leadership traits and abilities, capitalize on that. Use that to your advantage. Don't take advantage of the person by any stretch of the imagination, right? But this could turn out to be a great learning experience for yourself and for that employee.
All right, let's take a pause here. We're going to continue this conversation in our final section of this podcast series and also talk about how to get your executives to listen and take action so that you can reduce or end, preferably, the Great Resignation in your business.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.